attention to those, crime can have a negative impact on the development of our tourism industry. I also have to say, sir, that the focus at Glenderry Prison, it is my understanding, Mr. President, has changed. There are a number of programs that are instituted, and let me say this. You know, as I was thinking about this resolution, I remembered some persons that I know. There was one exactly the same age as me. I believe he died earlier this year. His name, sir, if I could call it, his name, sir, was Denzel Roberts. He was part of that, the four persons with the issue with Winston Hall and the plantation owner, Francia Plantation, I believe. Sir, we were essentially from the same community in Titchburn. Went, sir, to the same primary school, St. Giles Boys School. Sat, sir, in the same class. But the reality was, and is, sir, that our circumstances were a lot different, and the opportunities available were a lot different. And, sir, I'm told that if you look at the prison population, 70% of persons in prison do not have acceptable secondary education at all. And I think, sir, that we do have to ensure that while we speak to issues of incarceration, that we also make sure that there are proper programs for assisting prisoners. I think, sir, that there has been a major shift in the ideology of the operation of prisons. As I said before, prisons initially were thought of as places of hard labor. They are now, sir, focused more on the rehabilitation of offenders. And I am told that that is the route that those at Dodds are going, with an increase in the number of rehabilitative staff that are being employed at Dodds Prison. And so I'm told the prison has adopted a reintegration strategy for the service, and they've utilized the support of an entity out of Canada. So a strong focus on rehabilitation, that is important. Not only things in relation to car repairs or vocational classes. Minister spoke to the fact that, you know, there was a time when you got good bread from Glenderry Prison. In fact, I believe the sweetest bread. The sweetest bread. Sorry, sir, but I could taste it. No, I had some, sir. And the sweetest bread came from Glenderry Prison. But not only in relation to matters such as that, but also allowing persons to be exposed to the more traditional elements of education, I think is important. And the Ministry of Education is partnering with Dodds Prison in facilitating education for offenders. So, sorry, I wouldn't want it to appear that the prison is only just focused on one aspect, but I think we have to recognize the historical context, and that is that we've moved away from the stocks and the pillories and the treadmill type of treatment and punishment to one of rehabilitation and the recognizing of the human rights of prisoners. Mr. President, I believe that this resolution is an important resolution. It does allow us, sir, to take a facility that is now not being utilized in any way, and to have, through the BTII, request for proposals. And I'm encouraging, as I said, any entities that are looking to participate to ensure that there's involvement of the local community. And I believe, sir, that such a resolution could be the first stage in what could become a significant tourism attraction to the benefit not only of visitors, but of locals and to all Barbadians in general. And sir, with those few words, I give my full support to this resolution.
Thank you very much, Senator Grant. Senator Mr. Minard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not intend to be as brief as my colleagues. Mr. President, the vesting of this portion of Crown lands in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. speaks to government's hope and plan that this country will return to some level of normalcy in the future. But in this pandemic, Mr. President, we will only have a future if we can make it through the pandemic. On the Glenderry prison itself, Mr. President, it was a place of punishment. It was a place where our people who were sent there suffered, and some never walked out. And sad to say, some were never carried out because they were executed and buried there. I too, Mr. President, am connected to Glenderry. A lot of my male relatives from one side of my family were part of that penal institution, and some still are in different Caribbean islands because that has become part of us. Some have moved on and have become part of the legal fraternity and have risen to various levels in that area. Glenderry wasn't just a place, Mr. President, of punishment, but as has been said, unbelievable bits of furniture came from Glenderry. It was the place where our Barbados mahogany was truly utilized, and other woods. But Mr. President, I watched from the third floor of the QEH, I think it was on a Tuesday, as the black smoke billowed from Glenderry. And I watched it with mixed feelings because my relatives often spoke of the pain that they felt from the suffering that went on in Glenderry. And I have not warmed up to the idea that we will want to retain it as a building where the vast majority of our people who went there suffered. They went there for one reason, for punishment. And I don't ever believe that places of punishment should be glorified, especially places where we carry executions, where people's lives are taken, whether, especially if you've determined that they were guilty, whether they were innocent or not is a matter to be determined, and only one force can determine that. So I must agree with my colleague, Senator Franklin, that I would feel tremendous relief if I drove down Station Hill and I saw a clear space. You can't erase the past, but there's some things about it that you should not keep. That is my view. Mr. President, the matter of further vesting of Crown lands for development, and I'm going to preempt something that was said about oystins. I believe that when it's done, Mr. President, there must be some thought given to real preservation of the things that matter. I happened to have been at Oystins last weekend, and I took the opportunity to go and see an area that I was unaware of. And I grew up in Christchurch and I went to school at Foundation, and I spent many evenings in Oistins. I watched a program on television where I think it was a gentleman called Mr. McCaskey was doing a program on Oistins, and he revealed that there was an old fort behind what used to be District Hospital. And I felt that's not possible. So on Saturday evening, I went down to that spot, and lo and behold, there are remnants of a fort. And I counted 6 cannon in the water. And I went back home, and I found a book that I had bought. I do not want to call the wrong name, but it was a senior officer from the BDF had done a book, and he had recorded the locations, the sites where the various cannons were. I think it's Major Hartland. And that site is listed. And I would like to think that if or when there is further development considered there and it happens, we should seek to preserve that aspect of the past and not just bring in the bulldozers as you're so prone to do and knock down and flatten everything. Mr. President, if we are going to get to the future, however, we have to deal with the present. And I beg your indulgence, Mr. President, because we are making all these plans and government is making every effort to get things started for the future. But unless we get through this pandemic, Mr. President, our future is not going to be rosy. And I want to appeal, Mr. President, to all that along with the mask wearing and the sanitizing, that we have to do not only for ourselves but for others what is necessary. And it appears that the only thing that we have left, apart from prayer, I'm told, that seems to work for the prevention of COVID-19 is vaccination. And I don't know if enough adults and children of the right age have really sat down and thought of what it means, because it's one of the few things that you can really do quietly and help many other people. Mr. President, we watch every day as the numbers rise and fall and seesaw. And we see what has happened in other countries next door, because across the water we see it's happening. And I can't help but wonder what will happen if it happens here. And we are fortunate in that we have at our fingertips the material that is needed to prevent further spread. And I beg that our people will seriously consider taking it. Mr. President, if we unfortunately get caught, all the plans we're making here today will come to naught. And I hope that those who listen, Mr. President, will take action. And it's easy to be a naysayer, very easy. And you have to ask yourself whether the people who are the naysayers, what proof do they have that what they're saying is true? Then you ask yourself, what is the proof given that what is being offered to you works? And the evidence is clear. If you just look at the numbers listed from Harrison of the COVID timetable, or dashboard, you will see that among the unvaccinated, there are far, far greater numbers. So it appears at this point in time, the thing that you could have in your back pocket is a vaccine. Mr. President, I thank you and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Mr. Naylor. Senator Greenwich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to give support to the resolution. As you would know, sir, this matter was debated in the other place about 2 weeks or so ago. And approximately 2 days after that debate, I remember reading in the newspaper what some of the readers had said to the media. I was surprised, sir, that about half a dozen of those who were interviewed said almost the same thing, which I heard from Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard this morning. When asked what they think should happen to the site at Glenderry, they said, demolish it, knock it down, replace it with something else. And I have to say up front, sir, I do not agree with that position. I do not agree with Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard's thesis that Glenderry should be razed to the ground. I support much of what Senator Grant has said this morning. Indeed, sir, after reading what those interviewed had said in the newspaper, I read a very interesting article by Sir Henry Fraser. Indeed, sir, I think that should be compulsory reading for the two senators who spoke and took the other view. Because Sir Henry Fraser, he suggested that there should be something preserved which related to the prison. And I share that view, Mr. President. So I think it is a good idea for us in Barbados to bring this place to life again. I agree with having a tourism project there. The point is, sir, that whatever we do, it must be something to hold the attention of the tourists and the locals alike. Whatever, sir, the property is eventually, what is eventually used for, we should preserve some of what that Glenderry was as a prison. We must preserve part of our history. And I want to say to Senator Franklin and to Senator Maynard, through you, sir, we are not celebrating it. We are not celebrating it. To preserve part of our heritage is not celebrating what went on. And I think that that is where some of us are being misled. Sir, I know the area. I've gone there. I've actually interviewed prisoners there, prisoners who are on death row and so on. And I can tell you, sir, that there may be no need for the entire grounds to be used for mere prison heritage. If I remember correctly, sir, that property consists of about 3 massive buildings. One building, I am suggesting, sir, can be used for those exhibits relating to the prison. The other 2 buildings can be used for other aspects of our heritage that is outside of prison life, or for whatever project the BTII is thinking about. We can use just 1 building for prison life relics and so on, and the other 2 for something else. But the key thing in all of this is that we should utilize the space at Glenderry properly and efficiently. May I remind Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard too, sir, that there are certain parts in Africa, we can call it the motherland, the homeland, where we came from. Certain parts of Africa that still have as attractions the holding cells, where the slaves, our foreparents, were kept in preparation for that Middle Passage trip. They're still there to this day. And they're not celebrating those cells. They're not celebrating them. They're part and parcel of history. That is what they are. And we come in here, oh, we're celebrating this thing, and said, that is not what they are. These people, sir, are not ashamed of those cells. They see them as part of history. There are other places too, sir, where the dungeons, the cells, are there because they are part of history. So unlike Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard, we have to know where exactly we have to draw the line, and we cannot erase everything concerning our past. Some of it might be rough, yes, but we cannot erase everything concerning our heritage. So heritage tourism is a big thing. And we should not deny our heritage simply because it reminds us of the rough road that we've had to walk, that we've had to travel in the past. There was life before independence, sir, and our foreparents lived it, and we lived it. There was life before independence. There was life before republic, and we lived it. And we cannot continue to erase our history as though we were never a colony. We can't do it, sir. I have heard calls for them to change the name, for instance, of Princess Margaret School, the place that I taught when Princess Margaret came and opened the school. You know, that is part, we were a colony, that is part of our history. People are calling for us to erase everything. Everything. I know, sir, that we have in this country a group of Barbadians who believe that if part of our history is not pleasant in their opinion, then it should be eradicated and destroyed altogether. I know that group. I know that group, and I know it well, sir. So Nelson should be thrown into the wharf, and Nelson's statue should be destroyed, break up altogether. Sir, I can understand the point and the fact that Nelson should be nowhere near to Heroes Square. But when it comes to things like destroying the statue, you know, Nelson happened. Nelson's statue happened. Why should we destroy what was part of its colonial history? And it should be there. Sir, South Africa, the home of apartheid. will never destroy that cell which Senator Grant spoke about earlier, the one that housed Nelson Mandela. Yes, sir, there were times when history was not kind to us, but we should never be untruthful or unkind to history. We should not be, sir. Mr. President, this country is small, and even though it's small, I know of countries, at least two places smaller, and there have larger museums than we have. I think, sir, that our museum here has done a superb job up to now. I don't think it has a lot of space left. Although, to be quite frank, sir, I think that there is sufficient land space there and sufficient buildings and so on around the museum that we can use if we have to. But yes, I believe that some of the things which we have at the museum now can be transferred, can be used at any project such as the one we're thinking about at Glenderry. Because what is there, the thing is virtually bursting the museum at it seems. But as Minister Cummins said this morning, in order to make sensible suggestions, the BTII will be expecting that as many sources as possible will submit their ideas, their plans, and their proposals. I'm happy to see that the BTII is willing to listen to other possibilities, because so there have to be some in-depth analysis of the project which we are planning for Glenderry. Mr. President, we have never housed a prisoner at Glenderry of the caliber of Nelson Mandela. No, not at all. Mandela was indeed, sir, an international figure. And there are people who are willing to wait in lines for hours a day in order to see the cell which housed that great man. But as we have heard, sir, we have housed one of the greatest escape artists the region has ever known. And like Senator Grant, too, I recall when the chief of prison at the time fortified a particular cell and said that if the escape artist was good enough to get up from there, he would have to be Houdini. I remember that very well. In fact, I can't forget it. And I'll tell you why I can't forget it. I have acted as Prime Minister in this country on one occasion and one occasion only. And it was when I was acting Prime Minister that Winston Hall escaped the second time. I'll never forget it. So I may almost want to say it's because of me. But that's a fact. That is a fact. No, sir. As Senator Grant said, we have to tell our own story. We have to tell our own story. And as a Philippine, I cringe when I recall and when I realize what actually happened to Sam Lord's Castle. In fact, even as I speak now, I'm getting emotional. This was one of the bastions of our heritage. This Sam Lord's Castle. I mean, there were so many people in St. Philip worked at Sam Lord's Castle. This was one of the bastions of our heritage. But thankfully, sir, Sam Lord was immortalized in song by the Merry Men. And you can hum it, you know. He used to hang the lanterns in the coconut trees and lure those ships upon the reefs. And when the sailors thought they'd reached the town, alas, they run aground. You think, sir, that what happened to Sam Lord's Castle in Barbados could have happened to Sam Lord's Castle or a similar site anywhere else in the Caribbean? That would have been saved. That property, we have ourselves to blame, sir. We have ourselves to blame. He was a scoundrel. He was a scoundrel. And sir, he was not jailed in Barbados, if I remember correctly, but he was jailed in England. And we squandered the opportunity, sir, of keeping the many relics which were there at that castle. There's a maid who worked at Sam Lord's Castle who lived about 3 houses away from me. And she would tell me of the things she would have had to dust off every day. The swords that some soldiers carried coming off the ships, the helmets they were wearing. There was even a chest that Napoleon was sending to Josephine on one of the ships and so on. It hurts me as I could see those things because I visited there dozens and dozens of times. And all those things have gone to naught. I am saying so. There may be some in the museum for all I know. But sir, I believe that the Sam Lord's chapter would have fitted perfectly as one of the attractions of the prison. I do believe so, sir. Sir, I do not know what eventually will happen at Glenderry. I do believe, sir, that things like the gallows with the noose made of rope and so on, that could very well be preserved. The cat o' nine tails could be preserved. If you want, you can even preserve the section where the women were housed. They should be well kept, that area where the prisoners were buried. And like everyone else, sir, I recall the furniture which was made by the prisoners, and that can be displayed. All about through the government offices, we can see that furniture. In Parliament, we can see furniture built by the prisoners. In the courts of this country, we can see furniture built by the prisoners. And sir, I used to go to the exhibition as a boy, and I would walk and see the first prize and so on for furniture won by the prisoners. And I know, sir, that some ex-cons, when they left the prison, they came back and they continued to make furniture after their release. And we can have a section there to display the type of furniture that would have been built by the prisoners. So when I hear the talk about you are celebrating the punishment and so on, nonsense, utter nonsense, Mr. President. We can make use of that facility. So, as I finish, sir, I listened and I heard Senator Cummings call for ideas from all those who want to have proposals and projects. Submit them, please. And we do not want a project which is only there for show. We want something that is economically viable as well. Something which will want people to want to go to Glengarry. I'm obliged to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, His Honor Senator Greenidge. Senator Moore.
Mr. President, I rise this afternoon to make a contribution, a small contribution to the matter that's being debated and to show why it's important that we look at aspects of what has occurred here in terms of the vesting of this property into the hands of the BTII. Clearly, I think, like most people of my generation, we're well familiar with Glengarry Prison. Glengarry Prison, that site, is known certainly to most people in St. Michael, all over the country, really. And I've listened with some mixed feelings as to some of the comments made with regard to whether or not this site should be preserved or put to a constructive use. Now, we know the size of the property and the land, and certainly, like anything else in our history, all aspects of our history may not necessarily be what we want it to be. I don't think anyone is going to sit down and tout that a prison is something that we think is ever so wonderful. But it's a necessity of life. I don't think there's any country in the world where you don't have some type of penal institution because it is a necessity of life. This particular location that was previously used and is now no longer being used for the original purpose certainly does reflect a part of our history. Now, if one were to think that everything that is negative in our past should be forgotten, should be buried, should be totally dismantled and discarded, then when one looks at slavery and one sees remnants of our past, I don't think that there are many people in Barbados that would believe that slavery was a wonderful thing. So then does it mean we should get rid of all the slave huts, burn down or destroy all the plantation, homes, houses, and anything at all that were remnants of our slave past? I don't think anyone would think that that's the correct way in how you deal with your history. History is there for a purpose. It is there for future generations to know what has transpired within their society. How do you have an identity and continue to form an identity of yourself if you do not have one knowing what has transpired within the environment in which you, your family, your ancestors have lived? It's not possible. So one has to take these things within the context and understand why this particular vesting of this site is a good thing, because not only does it preserve an aspect of our history which people need to know about, because, there are many people that see, Mr. President, there are many people that feel that Barbados started in the 21st century. There's some who believe it started in the 20th century. And why do I have this belief, Mr. President? When one even looks at some of the things that we do, some of the things that we name after people, and some of the things that we do as a nation, it sometimes makes one think that those who make these decisions believe that Barbados started within the last 100 years. And that is not so. And what we cannot do is to try to discard or forget aspects of our history or see no value in the preservation of knowledge for future generations. So I am in support of the vesting of this land. I know the Glenderry prison is the site is of a bygone era. And like everything else, modernization, technology, and science changes our country. Our country is being changed before our eyes as we sit here in this Senate. Here we have a pandemic that has overwhelmed many countries. It is pervasive throughout the entire world, and certainly here in Barbados. You only have to read, Mr. President, your newspaper, listen to the radio or watch television, or even go on social media, and you can see what is transpiring with this particular pandemic. So we talk about technology, we talk about the science, and our approach and management of what's happening to us today. What's that? They say we should wear a mask. That's why I have on one. That is what the science says. That is what we are telling Barbadians, Mr. President, every day. Wear your mask. We are telling them, wear your mask when you are in closed environments. When we are in places like this, air-conditioned, with little ventilation, wear your mask. We tell them social distance. And that's why, as we are in here today, there's a distance between where we all sit. That was not so a year ago, was it, Mr. President? A year and a half ago, since the pandemic, it has become a necessity because of the changing world that we're in. Yes, we have our history, which we have talked about today, and we have what's happening to us today, which we have continued to learn from what transpired from the first time this virus would have been brought to our attention, Mr. President, in January of last year. And our approach to it and our solutions to it have continued to evolve based on what we are being told is the science. So we are all in here with masks. I am speaking with my mask on because the science says that you should continue to wear your mask, especially when you're speaking. It doesn't say remove your mask when you speak for a photo opportunity. It says keep your mask on. Why are we doing that? Because we care about other individuals, or should care about other individuals, Mr. President, and their protection. That is what we are telling the general public every day. You read the notices on social media, notices put out by the relevant authorities, Mr. President. It says social distance, wear your mask, especially in closed environments, and of course sanitize, etc. So one would hope that here in this chamber, Mr. President, that we would adhere to what we have been preaching to the general public. I don't know how well it is to hear someone speaking in a mask, but I'm sure this entire chamber, Mr. President, can understand and hear every word that I'm saying. We must not sit down and believe all of these, what I would like to say, are fake news. People say you can't wear masks for too many hours or for too long because it's going to have a deleterious effect on you. Well, if that's so, Mr. President, doctors could not be performing operations. Many operations take hours, but they can't whip off their mask in the middle of an operation, Mr. President, and then perhaps infect or hurt their patients. So, why are we here in this environment today? It is to debate this resolution. Now, technology may not have been used at Glenderry, because that was of a bygone era. technology today is being used at Dodds, the new facility for prisoners here in this island. And I think people who know the two facilities would concur that there is a huge difference between what was we previously had and what we have today. But technology too is important in our day-to-day existence in here. Why do I say that? Because the government has been using, private sector has been using, everyone has been using technology now because of the circumstances of COVID-19 in order to be able to transact the business of their companies or of any entity that has it available to them. When I say technology, Mr. President, I'm using it right now. I am talking through a microphone so everyone can hear me. People who have any broadband, data, or any type of social media can see me on YouTube and stuff. Just like how we have been able to see other parliaments worldwide by using technology. It wasn't as prevalent before COVID, Mr. President, but it has become even more used out of necessity. And why? Because we're trying to protect individuals. So when we go to places like the supermarket, we see it. You see the social distancing. They know that everyone's skills of reading may not be the same. So they ensure that they have nice markings on the ground so you know exactly where to stand. They ensure that you social distance. They make sure you wear your mask, sanitize your hands. You see it as well in the banks, insurance companies, government entities. We even have people, Mr. President, working from home. Why are they working from home? So that we're not bringing large groups of people together, especially with a deadly virus that has claimed the lives of many Barbadians and many people worldwide, and has also been, unfortunately, the reason for many people to have become quite ill and to have to spend some time away from their homes in a facility simply because they've contracted a virus. I see that I know there are some doctors in the Senate, and I won't speak about that aspect of what is this virus, only because they'll be better able to speak on that. But what we do know is that we try to keep people away from each other in other words, not make them congregate. Too many people coming together. So, Mr. President, I was quite, as much as I agree with this vesting of this property, I'm still not sure why we're all here in this environment today, and with people taking off their masks to speak. I'm not aware that that is the science. Perhaps it has changed. Who knows? Because things do change day to day. But what I do know is that technology is being used in order for people to be able to do their business virtually, in a virtual world. We see it all the time. We see it in other parliaments. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, the Parliament of Barbados uses the technology for elected members to be able to participate in the House, so that all of the elected members don't have to come together in the same room and space in order to conduct the business of the people. But not so, Mr. President, for the Senate. Not so. No amendment or adjustment has been made to allow us as people to be able to conduct our business unless we come here in person. We must be here in person, Mr. President, for this to happen. But not so. There are all kinds of theories, I don't know what they are. I have no idea. Some people are saying The reason why that senators must come in person and not elected members is because senators only make $1,400 a month. Oh, sorry, I'm being corrected, Mr. President. I apologize. $1,400.79 a month. Oh, $1,479.07 a month, Mr. President. There are chairmen of boards, Mr. President, that make more than that. But they're not being asked to come here in this particular environment. 21 people, Mr. President, 5 staff members and other people in order to conduct the business because, Mr. President, there's technology available that allows other aspects of the same parliament to be able to meet that are not afforded to the Senate. So I don't know if that's the reason, Mr. President. Some people theorize that it's to stop certain people from being in the Senate. So if you can't meet virtually, then they can't come and they cannot participate. I don't know if that's true. That's just a theory. That's just a theory, Mr. President. I cannot say. But what I can say is that in another place and another part of this parliament, they can do so. Some other people say the lives of senators are not as important because if something happens to a senator or you want to get rid of them, you just get rid of them and appoint someone else and put them in the chair. But not so for elected member, Mr. President, because for an elected member, you have to go to a by-election. So the process is not as simple. So therefore, perhaps that's why. I don't know. Like I said, that's just another theory. Then there's another theory, and that is that you're trying to protect, that we are trying to protect certain people because of issues. Let's leave it there. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I think that all Barbadians should be protected. You know, we talk about Black Lives Matter. This life matters. That life matters. All lives matter. All Barbadian lives matter. Whether they are in the Senate, an elected member, a member of the public, whether they are, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their religion, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their socioeconomic condition, every Barbadian life matters. Everyone. And it should. And when we make decisions as legislators, we should always remember that all lives matter. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure why senators are being made to come, all of them in person, in this environment. 21, along with the staff that's here. You're quite able to see, Mr. President, people that are present and other people who may wish to join that are able to do so once they're adhering to the protocols. Now, I don't know. What is the reason. I cannot say. I cannot say why the science is only applied certain places. I cannot say why the technology is only applied in certain places. I can't say, and I do not know the reason. But I will proffer this, Mr. President. I think that once you have the ability to make an adjustment to change the conditions of an individual in order to protect them, but still allow them to do the business for which they have committed, that should be put in place. Not just for a select few, but for all. Now, I know there are people in here who know far better than me all about rights. I know far better than me all about things like conditions of service and all of that. So I won't tread there either, except to say, when we are speaking about individuals, we should always remember that all individuals should have similar rights. And we should always try our best to ensure that we provide an opportunity of fairness, transparency, and of course of elucidation for individuals to know why Some individuals are afforded certain rights and courtesies, and others are not. It would make things a lot more equitable. It would make people understand what is transpiring, and it would not then appear, Mr. President, as if it's some sort of, I don't know, nonchalant, laissez-faire attitude towards an important aspect of what has to be done for the people of Barbados and the business of the people of Barbados. So, when we speak in here, Mr. President, and we're here to do this matter, this vesting, yes, I agree with it. But does it require all of us in here, in the midst of the spread of a variant of a deadly virus, is that the message that we're sending to Barbadians? What is the real purpose? Why? Why all these months can no provision be made for senators as has been made for other individuals who have to conduct the business of the people of Barbados, Mr. President, including government workers? Many of them are working from home. Why? We don't want all of them out sick. What happens, Mr. President, if one of us in here had the virus? Now, Mr. President, I know that there are people who are vaccinated, people who are not vaccinated, and what have you, and that's their choice. I personally believe, Mr. President, firmly believe in vaccination. And I want to say that in here, and I would encourage every and anyone that's not been vaccinated to do so. To do so. Because we know that there are more people who are infected with the virus who are not vaccinated than the ones that are vaccinated. So therefore, the vaccines are not foolproof, but they certainly offer a level of protection against serious illness in most cases. Because there's no absolute in life. But having said that, we still know there is a risk. Now, would you, if you heard gunfire run over the middle of the street, and I don't think so, so would you want to risk the health and safety and security of people where it is not necessary? Where it is not necessary. If the answer, Mr. President, is no, you would not risk the safety and security of people if it is not necessary, then I say again, this chamber, where we are sitting, and I'm talking about the room and not just the fact that it's the Senate chamber, Mr. President, is outfitted with technology already. So there's no additional cost to outfitting it with technology. None. So if there's no additional cost to outfitting it with technology, then why not allow and afford senators the same consideration that we are affording other Barbadians to protect themselves and their families, because they go home, don't they? Protect themselves and their families as much as is humanly possible. As much as is humanly possible. I already gave you some of the theories. I don't think I'll go over them again, because I think most people understood when I said what I said, that some people theorize it's to keep people out. Some people theorize life doesn't matter, whatever. It doesn't make a difference if all of those theories are incorrect. What is important is that we have options. We have options, Mr. President, and we should always consider options where we know it is the right thing to do. When we know, Mr. President, that is the right thing to do. I don't think that most people will willy-nilly do things most people, knowing that what they're doing has a negative, or can have, I should say, or can have, Mr. President, a negative effect on individuals. You know, the Golden Rule was proclaimed by Jesus and I won't bother, Mr. President, to go into a definition of that. Because I think most people in here, like most Barbadians, we grew up in a religious society. Many of us are Christian because Barbados is predominantly a Christian society. Not to say, and I embrace all religions, but the Golden Rule was proclaimed by Jesus of Nazareth during his Sermon on the Mount. Was it not? I know Dr. Holder is here, and I know Dr. Holder, who I believe her doctorate is in theology, as well as we also have, and she's not in his seat, but we do have another individual of the cloth. Because this maxim is found in most religions and cultures, the Golden Rule. So I believe, Mr. President, that certainly if it is good enough for the church, good enough for religions, it's not just Christian religions, it surely must be good enough for us to think about when we go to make decisions about ourselves, about our fellow colleagues, and certainly about all the citizens of our country. So, Mr. President, having said that, I will wrap up by saying that everything in life may not always have been good on our society, but if it was a necessity and it has a value for future generations, then it needs to be preserved so that they can learn something from what has transpired before them. And that is how societies develop and grow, and that is how people are able to expand their knowledge and their ability to do better for themselves and their families and other generations that will come long after we are gone. And so with this very short presentation, and with these few words, Mr. President, I will now take my seat, and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Moore. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move the suspension of the Honorable the Senate for 1 hour, so we reconvene at 20 minutes to 3.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 2:40 p.m. Those honorable senators in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting stands so suspended until 2:40 p.m. today.